Hello and welcome and namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asserts that India is a steadfast partner in Mongolia's development after holding bilateral talks with its visiting president. 10 packs exchanged in areas ranging from minerals to yoga. The International Monetary Fund raises India's growth projection for 2025 to 6.6% from its previous 6.4 projection in July, the highest among emerging market and developing economies despite Donald Trump's tariffs. French Prime Minister Lecurno suspends President Emmanuel Macron's flagship pension reform in a bid to get his 2026 budget passed and survive at least 2 no-confidence votes later this week. Andhra Pradesh to host Google's $15 billion AI data center. Prime Minister Modi calls it a landmark investment for India's tech future. And the military takes over in Madagascar after its president is impeached by lawmakers despite Ange Rajoelina dissolving the National Assembly following youth protests which forced him to flee the nation. Well, first up, India and Mongolia are marking 70 years of diplomatic relations and a decade of being strategic partners by forging even stronger ties. Its visiting president, Khurelsukh Ukhna, held delegation-level talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday in New Delhi, with the two leaders concluding several pacts in areas ranging from minerals to yoga. Key announcements related to travel were also made, with Prime Minister Modi declaring India being a steadfast partner in Mongolia's development. DD India's Jayanti Jha reports.
A moment rooted in friendship through centuries between India and Mongolia when visiting President Khurelsukh Ukhna planted a banyan tree along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Delhi on Tuesday as part of the Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam, or a tree in the mother's name campaign. The camaraderie between the leaders evident in their handshakes as also their purposeful strides. The Mongolian president is on his maiden India visit as his country's head of state since Monday for 4 days, along with a high-level delegation comprising ministers, officials, and other representatives. India and Mongolia held delegation-level talks on Tuesday covering the entire gamut of bilateral relations. Both leaders agreed to further deepen defense and security, trade and investment, development cooperation, and capacity building, as well as spiritual and cultural ties. A postage stamp to mark 70 years of the diplomatic relations between the two countries was also released by the leaders. Prime Minister Modi emphasized the close ties between the two nations, which will see further impetus with President Ukhna's visit. The PM also announced free e-visas for all Mongolian citizens, apart from steps to boost ancient linguistic and religious ties between India and Mongolia.
हमारी सरहदें भले ही जुड़ी हुई नहीं है, लेकिन भारत ने मंगोलिया को हमेशा एक पड़ोसी के रूप में देखा है और इसी नाते हम पीपल टू पीपल टाइज को बढ़ावा देते रहेंगे। हमने निर्णय लिया है कि मंगोलिया के नागरिकों को निःशुल्क ई वीजा दिया जाएगा। साथ ही भारत हर साल मंगोलिया से युवा कल्चरल एम्बेसडर्स की भारत यात्रा भी स्पॉन्सर करेगा।
He illustrated how India has been a strong and reliable partner in Mongolia's development and will remain so in future as well.
भारत की 1.7 बिलियन डॉलर की लाइन ऑफ क्रेडिट से बन रहा ऑयल रिफाइनरी प्रोजेक्ट मंगोलिया की ऊर्जा सुरक्षा को मजबूती देगा। यह भारत का विश्व में सबसे बड़ा डेवलपमेंट पार्टनरशिप प्रोजेक्ट है और 2500 से भी अधिक भारतीय अपने मंगोलिया के साथियों के साथ मिलकर इस प्रोजेक्ट को साकार कर रहे हैं.
The Mongolian president also announced plans to expand ties with India, including operating chartered flights to Delhi and Amritsar starting later this year. Several MOUs, including in the fields of geology, mineral, culture, yoga, were exchanged following the talks.
10 MOUs were signed. The joint statement will list out the MOUs. They were in the area of cultural exchange, immigration cooperation, promotion of cooperatives, humanitarian aid, geology and mineral resources, quick impact projects, yoga, and also renovation of the Bogd Khan Palace.
Earlier in the day, President Ukna paid homage to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, at his memorial, Rajghat. He also visited the Indian Parliament and held talks with Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla. India and Mongolia are marking 70 years of diplomatic relations and 10 years of becoming strategic partners. The visit from Mongolian head of state to Delhi at this juncture, charting the way ahead for even stronger relations. Jayanti Jha's report for DD India.
And India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also called on the Mongolian President Khurelsukh Ukna in New Delhi on Tuesday. The two leaders discussed ways to diversify cooperation into new areas while deepening existing programs of mutual interest. Both reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthen the India-Mongolia partnership. Now, after the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement, rebuilding Gaza is a monumental task due to the unprecedented scale of destruction and immense political, financial and logistical challenges. The United Nations has said that an estimated $70 billion cost has been incurred on rebuilding Gaza. Several European and Arab nations and the United States have expressed their willingness to contribute in the construction or reconstruction rather of the devastated territory. Raghukumar Jha puts into perspective the Herculean task of rebuilding Gaza and the challenges which lie ahead.
Thousands of displaced Palestinians returned to Gaza City after the US brokered ceasefire took effect on Monday. Families navigate rubble to the ruins of homes they had not seen for the past 2 years. Anxious to see what remained of their homes and wary of further hardships, they hope for a day when their native place would be reconstructed.
God willing, this will be the last war we see. There's nothing left of us. I am now old. I will be lucky if I witness the reconstruction of Gaza.
Almost all of Gaza's 2.2 million population has been displaced by the war, which erupted in October 2023 after Hamas-led militants stormed into Israel and killed around 1,200 people and took 251 hostages. Israel's retaliatory air and ground war killed over 67,000 people, reduced much of the coastal Gaza Strip to vast tracts of rubble, and wrought a humanitarian disaster. A comprehensive Gaza and West Bank interim rapid damage and needs assessment (IRDNA) report released by the World Bank, EU and the UN in February painted a grim picture. According to this assessment, from October 2023 to January 2025, the estimated physical damages incurred were around $29.9 billion, and economic and social losses amounted to $19.1 billion. So reconstructing Gaza is a Herculean task. UNDP says an estimated $70 billion cost to be incurred on rebuilding Gaza, and European and Arab nations and the US appear willing to contribute to the estimated cost.
We've heard very positive news from a number of our partners, including European partners, the European Union, Canada, for instance, as well. The Germans have indicated some funding. And as I mentioned yesterday, there were also discussions with the United States in terms of their interest to support the early recovery and humanitarian efforts as well.
Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar have pledged $15 to $20 billion. Egypt and Jordan have promised to fund $3 to $5 billion. United States has pledged to give $1 to $2 billion. European Union and UK have pledged to give $5 to $8 billion. The United Nations, World Bank have promised to fund $5 to $10 billion. Besides, the private sector has promised an investment of $5 to $10 billion in Gaza. It is estimated that clearing the massive amount of rubble, as much as 55 million tons, could take 15 years alone. This process is made more difficult and dangerous by the presence of unexploded ordnances and human remains. Numerous and conflicting proposals for the reconstruction of Gaza are being developed by various international parties, including the United States Arab League and the United Nations. But the path to implementation remains complex due to ongoing disagreements over security, governance, and the role of Hamas. Raghav Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
And after more than 2 years in captivity, 20 Israeli hostages held by the Hamas have been released under a ceasefire agreement. The emotional reunions have sparked celebrations across Israel as families embraced loved ones they feared lost forever. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay brings us this report.
Families of the 20 Israeli hostages released by Hamas are overwhelmed with emotion following their return from Gaza. The hostages held captive for over 2 years were handed over to the International Committee of the Red Cross inside Gaza, then transferred to the Israeli Defense Forces and taken to hospitals in Tel Aviv for medical evaluation and reunions.
First, I have to say that I felt immense happiness and joy. Who could ask more than that? The release of all the hostages. Of course, there is sadness in the fact that the dead hostages haven't been returned yet. Hopefully, it will change, and all the hostages will come back home. Some to healing, to medical assistance, and some to burial. Okay, that's my hope.
I feel it was a very emotional day yesterday. It was. I was very happy that they came back, and I saw all the joy and all the people are applauding and came here, of course, to celebrate.
Scenes of joy and relief unfolded across the country. At Tel Aviv Soraski Medical Center, families of Matan Angrest and Omri Miran burst into tears and cheers as they watched live footage of their release. Anat Angrest, Matan's mother, cried and screamed with joy upon seeing her son on screen, her voice trembling with disbelief and gratitude. In northern Israel, the family of Alon Ohel gathered at his home, singing and applauding as news of his release broke. The atmosphere was electric with emotion. His brother, Ronen Ohel, shared the moment of reunion with heartfelt words.
After 2 years, my big brother, Alon, is back home. I saw him today when he back from Gaza, and it was so exciting for us and for Alon. We jumped on each other as we first saw each other, and from now we need to do everything to get our life back, and it will happen.
Thousands gathered at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, where the announcement of the final living hostages' release prompted spontaneous celebrations. Cheering, hugging, and weeping filled the air as strangers embraced one another, united by relief and shared hope. As Israel celebrates the return of its citizens, the nation remains united in grief and hope, grieving for those lost and hoping for answers about those still missing. The road to healing begins with these reunions, but the journey is far from over. Rahul Upadhyay reports for DD India.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour. US President Donald Trump will host Argentina's President Javier Milei as the US advances $20 billion bailout. 16 killed as a fire breaks out in 2 garment factories in Bangladesh's capital. And dinosaur footprints stretching more than 200 meters found in a British quarry.
There's so many invaluable artifacts that the British have taken from our country. They robbed us of our self-respect. They robbed us of our honor. Loot was never innocent. It was painful.
The word loot, that was stolen from India too.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecurno on Tuesday suspended a landmark 2023 pension reform until after the 2027 presidential elections, bowing to pressure from leftist lawmakers. Lecurno, who is facing an uphill battle to survive at least 2 no-confidence votes later this week, made the announcement in Parliament as part of a last-ditch attempt to forge the conditions for passing a slimmed-down 2026 budget. Lecurno's decision represents an acknowledgement by French President Emmanuel Macron that mothballing the pension reform was the only way to ensure the survival of Lecurno's government.
I will propose to Parliament starting this autumn that we suspend the 2023 pension reform until the presidential election. No increase in the retirement age will take place from now until January 2028, as specifically requested by the CFDT. In addition, the insurance period will also be suspended and will remain at 170 quarters until January 2028.
Now, tens of thousands of people marched through Brussels on Tuesday in a nationwide strike against the government's austerity measures. The protests disrupted flights and public transport as union opposed Prime Minister Bart de Wever's plans to reform pensions and cut spending to reduce Belgium's budget deficit, which breaches EU rules. Brussels Airport cancelled all departures, while Charleroi Airport also halted operations. Demonstrators denounced plans to raise the retirement age to 67 and accused the government of targeting workers instead of the wealthy. The strike adds pressure on de Wever's coalition, which is yet to agree on a new budget amid efforts to save $12 billion and boost defense spending under NATO commitments.
It's about our pension. We need to work longer than what we used to. When I'm old, I just want to have my time. I want my time to follow my dreams, and right now, like, the government is putting so many rules that I need to work longer. There are not that many possibilities. I'm a student, and like, it's so hard right now to live this life on this world.
The Kremlin has welcomed US President Donald Trump's focus on seeking a peace deal to end the war in Ukraine, following his success in brokering a Gaza ceasefire. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Moscow remains open to peace talks and hopes Washington's diplomatic influence can encourage Kyiv to engage. Both sides have accused each other of stalling negotiations, even as tensions persist over possible US arms supplies to Ukraine. Earlier, addressing Israel's Knesset, Trump said resolving the Russia-Ukraine conflict would be his next priority, with his envoy Steve Witkoff expected to play a key role.
We certainly welcome such intentions, and we welcome the confirmation of the political will to do everything possible to promote the search for the peaceful solutions. We are ready, well acquainted with Mr. Witkoff. He has proven his effectiveness now in the Middle East, and we hope that his talent will continue to contribute to the work already underway in Ukraine.
And Trump will host Argentine President Javier Milei at the White House on Tuesday, just days after Washington agreed to a $20 billion currency swap with Argentina's central bank. The deal, announced by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent earlier this month, will see the U.S. exchange stable dollars for volatile pesos in a bid to steady Argentina's struggling economy. The White House has called the move a strategic effort to support a key regional ally, but the decision has sparked domestic backlash. For Milei, the U.S. assistance offers a critical political reprieve as he battles mounting economic turmoil and waning support ahead of midterm elections. Now, Madagascar has been in political turmoil as the military has now seized control, dissolving most state institutions. The National Assembly, however, remains active and has voted to impeach President Ange Ratweler in defiance of in defiance of his bid to dissolve the legislature from an undisclosed location. Ratweler has fled the country amid weeks of protest by Gen Z over corruption, failing public services and governance crisis. Here's more in this report.
Madagascar is in the grip of political upheaval after the military has seized control, dissolving all key institutions except the National Assembly, which has now voted to impeach President Ange Ratweler. This follows after massive protest by Gen Z across the country. The National Assembly passed the resolution with 130 votes in favor, a dramatic rebuke to Ratweler, who has gone into hiding after weeks of protests over his leadership and governance failures.
In application of Article 40.1 of the Constitution, the National Assembly, meeting in extraordinary session, shall pronounce the permanent dismissal of the President of the Republic due to his manifest incompatibilities and conflict of interest, activities of a nature to harm the dignity of the nation and national unity.
The move comes just after Ratweler himself dissolved the National Assembly to block an impeachment vote, a step that further inflamed public anger. Thousands, including civil servants and trade unionists, poured into the streets demanding his resignation.
We are not satisfied because these are not the things we expected to hear in this speech. We want him to resign immediately. We do not want to wait any longer. We do not want propaganda and all that. We want him to resign.
Amid reports, Ratweler has fled the country. He reappeared in a national address saying he had been forced to relocate to a safe place due to threats to his life.
We have all seen that the crises that have occurred in the country have led to ruin and recession. There have been real plans since 25 September for a coup, an assassination attempt against me.
The unrest began on September 25 over crippling water and power shortages, but quickly snowballed into a nationwide uprising over corruption, poor governance, and collapsing public services. With the president in hiding, parliament asserting its authority, and the military now in charge, Madagascar faces a volatile and uncertain political future. Bureau Report, DD India.
The US and China have opened a new front in their trade war, this time on the high seas. Both the nations have imposed extra port fees on shipping firms after Beijing tightened rare earth export controls. Amid rising tensions, President Trump and US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have struck a hopeful tone ahead of upcoming trade talks, raising cautious optimism that Washington and Beijing can steer their rivalry towards dialogue. DD India's Nishor Roy reports.
The world's two largest economies once again locked horns, this time on the high seas. The United States and China have begun imposing additional port fees on ocean shipping firms, targeting vessels that carry everything from crude oil to consumer goods. The move has opened a new front in the intensifying trade war, signaling that both nations are willing to extend their economic rivalry beyond tariffs and technology. The escalation follows Beijing's decision to expand export controls on rare earth elements, a critical component for global industries ranging from electronics to defense.
I can tell you it was highly inappropriate for them to announce these export controls on the day that the peace deal was announced and overshadow that.
While China maintained its dual stance, vowing to continue the tariff fight if provoked but keeping the door open for talks, signs of cautious optimism emerged. President Donald Trump's conciliatory remarks and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's assurance that the upcoming US-China dialogue remains on track helped lift investors' sentiment, with Wall Street closing sharply higher in the previous session.
The Chinese economy is doing very poorly, and maybe they're trying to take focus off of that. They purchase Iranian oil, and we have been calling them out on that. So maybe it was to distract from that. And three, maybe it was a mistaken attempt to try to gain leverage before the two leaders meet in Korea in October. And I can tell you, trying to get leverage in front of a meeting with Donald Trump is a bad idea.
As the tensions simmer and talks loom, the coming weeks will test whether Washington and Beijing can steer rivalry towards dialogue or risk turning economic brinkmanship into a deeper global confrontation. Nishchoy Roy's report for DD India.
Now, India's growth outlook remains resilient even as global economic prospects dim, according to the International Monetary Fund's latest World Economic Outlook report. The report projects India's financial year 26 growth at 6.6%, revised up by 20 basis points from July's forecast of 6.4%, reflecting a strong Q1 carryover that offsets the impact of increased US tariffs on imports from India. Growth in FY27 is projected at 6.2%, down 20 basis points from July's estimate, as the initial momentum from FY26 gradually normalizes. The IMF has highlighted that India has recorded the strongest upside surprise among all emerging market as well as developing economies. Also, the IMF on Tuesday lifted its outlook for global growth this year, flagging a milder than expected economic hit from President Trump's tariff policies, while warning of risks ahead. In its flagship World Economic Outlook report compiled before the most recent US-China tariff spat, the IMF hiked its 2025 global growth forecast to 3.2%, up from 3% in July, while leaving its prediction for 2026 unchanged at 3.1%. IMF chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas has said the growth downgrade is at the modest end of the range.
In April, the US shook global trade norms by announcing sweeping tariffs. Our April report offered a range of estimates for the resulting growth downgrade, from modest to significant. 6 months on, where are we? The good news is that the growth downgrade is at the modest end of the range, with growth projected at 3.2% this year and 3.1% next year, while inflation has increased modestly and is proving more persistent.
Now, at least 16 people have been killed and several others injured after a massive fire broke out at a garment factory and adjacent chemical warehouse in Dhaka's Mirpur area on Tuesday. Fire service and civil defense officials said the toll may rise as rescue operations continue at the site. Of the casualties, most victims are believed to have died from inhaling toxic fumes. While the blaze at the garment factory has been brought under control, the fire at the chemical warehouse containing bleaching powder, plastics and hydrogen peroxide continues to burn. Authorities have sent the recovered bodies to Dhaka Medical College Hospital for identification. Officials noted that DNA tests may be required to confirm the victims' identities. And let's now take a look at some other stories making news around the world as well. A new AI vision system developed by UK startup Lion Vision is helping detect and remove lithium-ion batteries from waste streams to prevent fires at recycling plants. The camera-based tool identifies batteries and ejects them safely using compressed air to boost recycling safety and recover valuable materials. Gucci, Chloe and Loewe have been fined €157 million by the European Union for illegally fixing resale prices and limiting discounts. The watchdog said these practices hurt competition and retailer freedom. Gucci was hit hardest, incurring a €119.7 million penalty. All three brands pledged to comply with antitrust laws going forward. And actress Naomi Watts has received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, celebrating over 2 decades in films. On receiving the honor, the two-time Oscar nominee said the honor proves a woman's worth doesn't fade with age. Paleontologists in Britain have uncovered an extraordinary set of dinosaur footprints stretching over 200 meters in an Oxfordshire quarry. The discovery was made at Dewars Farm Quarry, the same site where earlier tracks were found in the 1990s and again last year. The latest trail, unearthed in a different section of the quarry, offers new clues about dinosaur movement across the region millions of years ago. Alongside the footprints, scientists also discovered a variety of seashells and a sea urchin. And still to come on DD India NewsHour, we'll be talking about how India has further strengthened its ties with Mongolia during the ongoing visit of the Central Asian nation's president to New Delhi with our expert guest. United Nations Troop Contributing Countries Chiefs Conclave 2025 commences in New Delhi, marking a landmark moment in international peacekeeping deliberations. And Canada seeks stronger partnership with India with public safety trade at the forefront, says visiting Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand.
There's so many invaluable artifacts that the British have taken from our country. They robbed us of our self-respect. They robbed us of our honor. Loot was never innocent, it was painful.
The word loot, that was stolen from India too.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go any further, let's tell you what we've got next. Now, Prime Minister Modi has asserted that India is a steadfast partner of Mongolia's development after holding bilateral talks with its visiting president. 10 packs have been exchanged in areas ranging from minerals to yoga. The International Monetary Fund has raised India's growth projection for 2025 to 6.6% from 6.4%, which was its previous estimate in July, the highest among emerging market and developing economies, despite Donald Trump's tariffs. And French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecurno suspends President Emmanuel Macron's flagship pension reform in a bid to get his 2026 budget passed and survive at least two no-confidence motions later this week. Let's now talk about how India and Mongolia are forging ahead in their ties with the ongoing visit of its president. We're joined by our guest, an expert guest, Master Sanjay Bhattacharya, who's former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs. Good evening to you, Ambassador Bhattacharya. What do you make of what's happened today in the context of how ties have been taken through the last 70 years? 70 years we've had diplomatic relations with Mongolia. Do you think we've seen things gathering unprecedented pace over the last decade or so?
Well, certainly. This is a very special visit. It's not only the first visit that he's undertaking as president of Mongolia, but it also happens to mark, as you mentioned, the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties, as well as the 10th anniversary of our strategic partnership. And our strategic partnership with Mongolia is rather unique because it has a certain civilizational, cultural context, as well as a very forward-oriented one in terms of our economic cooperation, capacity building, and the other areas that we work upon. So given the kind of sentiment that there is in Mongolia for the people of India, the Buddhist connection that has been always very strong, we have sought to seek that as a foundation towards taking our relations into a more future-oriented partnership that is more relevant in the contemporary world. And I think we've seen great progress in different areas. The kind of MOUs that were signed, 10 of them today, are only an indication. LOCs, cooperation in agriculture, critical materials, in health, in defense cooperation, visa-free, e-visas free to the Mongolians, and so on. So it's really been a very exciting visit. He's going to be here for 4 days, and that's also an indication of the growing ties between our two countries.
What has stood out for you? Because there's an extensive list of outcomes, really. There's, as you mentioned, there's an MOU in cooperation in geology and mineral resources. Mongolia has exploring the kind of rich resources it has. It's still in the exploratory phase, because they are being developed. They do export a lot of that, but there's still a lot of room to grow there. Also, the fact that India will appoint a resident defense attaché now as well very soon there. That's also been agreed during this trip.
Absolutely. I think what we are seeing is that our relations with Mongolia are moving to the next level beyond the cultural contact, which of course is very substantial and very deep, and therefore provides an underpinning, a very broad understanding for doing things that are much more relevant in the contemporary world. Let me mention a few words about the geology and minerals, because that is a very critical element. We have been working with them on a coking coal project. Of course, most of it is exported to other countries because the logistics of a landlocked country are not so easy. But Mongolia has recently also found deposits of zinc, tin, and other critical minerals.
Molybdenum, I believe, as well.
Yes, so they're all very, very relevant from the perspective of the critical material security and the storage facilities that we are looking for. We're already talking with the Russians to see whether there can be more feasible options for exporting them through the Russian ports. We're also seeing at other kinds of development that can happen within the processing within Mongolia. You're aware that we already have an oil refinery project in Mongolia, which is under construction right now, and that will enhance Mongolia's capabilities to a large extent, build up its sustainability, and therefore also give it greater potential to exploit and to harvest the other minerals that we have. The defense cooperation that you mentioned is also very significant because we are working on several platforms and initiatives with the Mongolian side. We've had, of course, the contacts through joint exercises for some time now. There are two exercises that we do primarily, one about nomadic steplands, where we do these exercises with the Mongolian side. And there is another one, which is a Mongolian initiative of quick reaction, the Bodkan initiative. So I think apart from that, we are now looking at the possibilities of providing capacity building to their defense forces, the border defense forces, and to build up and scale up their capabilities in terms of the use of new technologies, drones, and so on. So the appointment of a resident defense attaché in Ulaanbaatar would be a very important step in this particular context, because there is also the opportunities and the future possibilities for the export of equipment that the Mongol side would naturally wish to have in the days to come.
Let's talk about the third neighbor policy that Mongolia has tried to take forward perhaps since the 90s, and India, of course, has Act East as well. To what extent can these two really come together to ensure that India and Mongolia progress together and build upon the ties which have been under par so far?
So this is a very special initiative if you look at it, because Mongolia, as you know, is landlocked and it borders only Russia and China. And when it looks at a third neighbor, it kind of echoes with the kind of sentiment that we also have when we talk of what we call our extended neighborhood. And so an extended neighborhood is a set of countries with whom we share values which may not be geographically contiguous, but because of the kind of common values and aspirations that we have, it actually builds a certain momentum in the kind of relations that we develop. And so I think what we are seeing between India and Mongolia is a similar kind of sentiment being expressed on both sides. As you know, Buddhism had traveled from India into Tibet, and then that Tibetan brand of Buddhism then went and influenced Mongolia. I remember many years ago when a relic of the Lord Buddha himself was carried to Ulaanbaatar for an exhibition for a certain period of time. The entire cabinet of the Mongolian side had kind of come down on their knees on the tarmac of the airport to receive that particular relic. I understand there will be the relics of two other Buddhist saints that will be carried across to commemorate the 70th anniversary of our relations. Also, we'll be looking at more cultural exchanges. The Bodh Khan Palace, which is in Ulaanbaatar, if you see it, it's a magnificent structure. It has a lot of old heritage, and a lot of it is connected with India and the kind of Buddhism that came from India, which the Mongols appreciate and value so much. And we are going about with a restoration program for that particular structure. And finally, I think we have upped the number of ITech and ICCR scholarships.
Yes.
Sanskrit scholars, and I think, I'm not sure if they're also sending Pali scholars, because a lot of the texts were in Pali that were taken across to Mongolia to kind of upgrade their capabilities on that particular front.
Yes, Sanskrit has definitely been mentioned, and the prospect of chartered flight has also been floated, although viability perhaps has to be assessed, and perhaps more youth exchanges would also be very, very fruitful in the coming decades as well. Already 70 years going strong, and stronger still to go. Thanks a lot for joining us, Ambassador, to talk about it.
Thank you.
Now, India hosts the United Nations Troop Contributing Countries, or UNTCC Chiefs Conclave in Delhi on Tuesday. The three-day event brings together military chiefs from more than 30 countries to enhance cooperation, share insights and shape the future of UN peacekeeping. Vishal Baristo reports.
India is hosting the United Nations Troop Contributing Countries Chiefs Conclave in Delhi. Speaking on the occasion, the Defence Minister of India, Rajnath Singh, underlined India's commitment towards UN peacekeeping efforts. He said that India has always been on the forefront of peacekeeping missions, as India believes that the world is a family.
Under Atmanirbhar Bharat, India has developed cost-effective indigenous technologies that strengthen peacekeeping missions in form of land mobility platforms, secure communications, surveillance systems, UAVs, and medical support solutions. These innovations enhance situational awareness, responsiveness, and safety.
For India, peacekeeping has never been an act of choice but an article of faith. From the very dawn of our independence, India has stood firm with the United Nations in its mission to maintain international peace and security. Welcoming the delegates, the Chief of Indian Army said hosting this conference in India is not only a privilege but also a reaffirmation of our shared determination to strengthen cooperation and carry forward the noble mission of global peace. General Dwivedi highlighted the contribution of Indian forces in various missions across the globe.
A peacekeeper, apart from being a security provider, is a diplomat, a technology enthusiast, a nation builder in far-flung areas, and also maybe the only media for flow of information in conflict zones. The blue helmet, or casque blue, can in fact be called the glue that binds a mission and facilitates the functioning of the other organs of United Nations, as also the NGOs.
India, as one of the largest contributors to peacekeeping, has sent approx 300,000 men and women across 51 missions out of the total 71 peacekeeping missions of the UN. These include our early deployments in Korea 1950 and Congo 1960 to the current deployment in 9 out of 11 ongoing missions. The Under-Secretary General for the United Nations Department of Peace Operations, which oversees UN peacekeeping missions globally, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, highlighted the challenges of shrinking financial support. He lauded India's contribution towards upholding peace across the globe.
I commend the Government of India for organizing this much-needed conclave. It provides a vital space for UN troop and police contributing countries to exchange lessons, strengthen cooperation and deepen collaboration, all in the pursuit of peace.
The conclave is a reflection of the Indian ethos of Vasudev Kutumbakam and aims to build a shared understanding for the future of peacekeeping.
The whole focus of this three-day conclave is to showcase India's self-reliance in equipping its peacekeepers and promoting indigenous solutions for global peacekeeping. With cameraman Vicky Rajput and Lalit in Delhi, this is Vishal Baristo for DD India.
Now, the United Nations Troop Contributing Countries Chiefs Conclave 2025 commenced on Tuesday, like I said, in New Delhi, marking a landmark moment in international peacekeeping deliberations. Speaking at the event, Deputy Chief of Army Staff Rajiv Ghai revealed that the sheer precision and intensity of Operation Sindoor forced Pakistan to request a ceasefire within just 88 hours. He emphasized that the Indian Army's actions were carefully calculated.
If I was to just encapsulate this whole operation, 88 hours is what it took for the enemy to come and ask for a cessation of hostilities. You're well aware of that. For that call to be made by my counterpart then. We achieved our politico-military aims. We hit 9 targets across the breadth of Pakistan. As far as our military actions were concerned, they were targeted, controlled, non-escalatory, and we openly acknowledged them to maintain our credibility.
Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand on Tuesday reaffirmed Canada's commitment to deepening its partnership with India, emphasizing public safety at home and enhanced economic cooperation as central pillars of the bilateral relationship.
We have a focus on domestic public security in Canada. At the same time, we are working to strengthen the economic relationship with India across various sectors. Those include AI, energy, agriculture and agri-food, climate and environmental sustainability, as well as people-to-people and business-to-business ties. This is a comprehensive draft statement or final statement that we released yesterday, and we look forward to working with India in the next iterations of the Canada-India relationship.
Now, India is set to host one of Google's biggest ever global investments, a $15 billion AI data hub in Andhra Pradesh. The mega investment comes as a global tech giants race to expand data centers amidst soaring AI demand. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that the project will power India's vision of becoming a developed nation through technology.
Marking one of its biggest ever investments in India, Google will invest $15 billion over the next 5 years to set up data center capacity for an artificial intelligence hub in Andhra Pradesh. The project ranks among Google's largest AI hub investments globally outside the United States.
We're very pleased to announce a new gigawatt scale AI hub in Visakhapatnam. It's the largest AI hub that we are going to be investing in anywhere in the world outside of the US. It represents a capital investment over the next 5 years of $15 billion.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the launch of the Google AI Hub will be a powerful force in democratizing technology. He said that the multifaceted investment, which includes gigawatt-scale data center infrastructure, aligns with India's vision of becoming a developed India. The move comes amid intensifying competition among tech giants, building data centers to meet booming demand for AI services. Google alone plans to spend $85 billion this year to expand data capacity worldwide. AI's growing computing needs are driving demand for specialized data centers that connect thousands of chips and clusters. Microsoft and Amazon have already invested billions in India, a key growth market with nearly 1 billion internet users. Google CEO Sundar Pichai said he spoke with Prime Minister Narendra Modi about the company's plans for its first ever AI hub in Visakhapatnam. Union IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav welcomed the investment, saying the project will strengthen India's digital infrastructure and accelerate progress towards India's AI mission.
This digital infrastructure will go a long way in meeting the goals of our India AI mission. First, skilling. We all know that AI is fundamentally changing the way the world moves today. Under such circumstances, there is a serious concern among a lot of IT professionals of what their jobs will be, where they would, how their lives will be impacted. So it's very important for all of us, especially the industry, to reskill and upskill our IT professionals in a major way.
While Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister N. Chandrababu Naidu called it the biggest technological milestone for the state and the nation.
Always, I am a great admirer of Google. Your creativity, your speed, that is very, very important. Just now, our friend has shown transformational changes in information technology. Fortunately, I was associated all these phases. From iTech City and IT promotion, started in Hyderabad, that is late 90s. Today, 2025, we are talking about data center and artificial intelligence.
The Google AI Hub marks a major step in India's digital transformation journey, reinforcing the country's position as a global hub for next-generation technology and innovation. Ankit Mishra's report for DD India.
Now, India has announced the resumption of all categories of international postal services to the United States from the 15th of this month. Services were suspended in August following a US executive order that ended exemptions for postal shipments, necessitating new customs and duty collection mechanisms. After extensive coordination and successful trials in Delhi and Maharashtra, India Post has introduced a delivery duty paid mechanism to comply with US Customs and Border Protection regulations. India's wholesale inflation eased to 0.13% in September 2025, marking a significant decrease from 0.52% in August and 1.91% in September a year ago. The moderation was largely driven by lower prices of food articles and manufactured goods. Deflation in food articles deepened to 5.22% in September from 3.06% in August, with vegetable prices plunging 24.41%, reflecting a sharp seasonal correction in food inflation. Sporting updates as well. Well, India sealed a decisive 7-wicket victory over the West Indies in the second test at the Arun Jaitley Stadium in Delhi, completing a dominant 2-0 series sweep on Tuesday. Chasing a modest target of 121 in the second innings, India began the final day on 63 for 1 and required just 58 more to win the match. West Indies secured 2 quick wickets, with Roston Chase dismissing both Sudarshan and captain Shubman Gill, but the target was too small to defend. Opener KL Rahul and wicketkeeper batter Dhruv Jurel steadied the ship and ensured there were no further scares. Rahul scored an impressive and unbeaten 58 to guide the hosts to the first ever series win under skipper Shubman Gill. Kuldeep Yadav was adjudged man of the match for his superb bowling, while Ravindra Jadeja was named man of the series for his all-round performance. Australia will miss the services of leg spinner Adam Zampa and wicketkeeper Josh Inglis in the first home ODI against India in Perth on Sunday. Matthew Kuhneman and Josh Philippe have been called in as replacements for the much-anticipated series. Zampa will miss the fixture due to paternity reasons, while Inglis is recovering from a calf strain. Inglis will also miss the second ODI, scheduled for next week in Adelaide, which will see Alex Carey's return to the 50-over setup. Carey is featuring in a Sheffield Shield match as part of his preparations for the Ashes, which will keep him out of the first match. The 3-match series between India and Australia will commence on the 19th of this month. And that's all we have time for in this edition of DD India News Hour. And do keep watching us for all the latest here on DD India. But before we go, Sri Lankan students at Natakala Mandir and Swami Vivekanand Cultural Centre in Colombo organized Natya Manjari, an evening of Indian classical dance on the occasion of Diwali at the centre earlier today. Guru Vasugi Jagadishwaran students performed Bharatanatyam celebrating the festive season. Enjoy.